Welcome to the wrap-up press conference at the FIBA Basketball World Cup 2023. Thank you for joining us today for the final day in the Mall of Asia Arena in Manila, in the Philippines. With me here today is FIBA Secretary General Andreas Zagklis, who will share with you some notable facts and figures on the tournament in a second, before press will be able to ask some questions as well. Andreas, after 2.5 weeks of great basketball, only 2 more games are left on this final day at the FIBA Basketball World Cup to determine the final podium, and we're thrilled to hear your thoughts on the tournament.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. For those of you who traveled long, special thank you. What a tournament we've had in Jakarta, in Okinawa, and here in Manila. A tournament that spread for the first time over 3 countries. A tournament that had to be prepared also during COVID. A tournament that saw 2 great venues being constructed, one in Jakarta and one in Okinawa. The renovation of Araneta, and of course, beautiful Mall of Asia that we are in here today to enjoy the final, and the Philippines Arena that recorded the World Cup record of 13,115 spectators. The attendances, speaking of which, the attendances are expected to break today the 700,000 mark for the World Cup. In terms of percentages, great success in Okinawa, more than 80%, actually 85% occupancy in average. In Jakarta, more than 60%, and we will have final figures for Manila tonight. Broadcast some records, great market shares. In Japan, the game against Cape Verde is the most watched program, not sports program, but any program in the country this year. And the second biggest sports audience in Philippines, with the Philippines-Angola game for the year. More than 40% market share in Slovenia for Slovenia versus Canada. More than 30%, almost 35% market share South Sudan, Puerto Rico, that went to overtime. And Lithuania, Serbia, more than 25% market. But I guess this will be dwarfed by tonight's final. Quite happy about the social media score of our accounts. More than 10 billion impressions. That means double from China in 2019. And that is figures of last night before the end of the tournament. Also double engagement, 260 million. 3 times we tripled the video views. I think this is very important because the images are what inspire the people and what also make the next generation want to grab a ball. And not insignificant that in just 2.5 weeks, the FIBA social media accounts added 2 million new followers. Besides the attendances and the social media and the broadcast numbers, what was the focus for us here was the players' experience. The players' experience that started with a dedicated program in China and was taken to a different level, totally different level in the 3 countries. First of all, much fewer transfers for the teams. 16 teams had no transfer. They played in Manila. And the other 16 teams, those that had to come to Manila, had only 1 trip to make with a charter flight taken care of by FIBA and the organizers, and then they had an extra day of rest. No back-to-backs, with the exception of the 2 teams that lost the first classification game. No other team had, except for these 2 teams, no other team had any back-to-back in the tournament. Single rooms for the first time for the players, covered by FIBA and the organizers. Dedicated players' lounges, with a person in charge who is a former player that was the liaison between the teams and the organizing committees, former players who have been there, have done that, and were our advisors on how to build these player venues, this recovery space and areas, and from their own dedicated bar to a barber shop in every player's hotel. I think we have to, and we want to thank from the bottom of our heart the 3 LOCs and their respective governments in Philippines, Japan, and Indonesia, the national federations that took this tremendous responsibility, which is to run the FIBA flagship event, and they have delivered it with flying colors. And they are proud, but we're also very proud of them. And I think our players and our fans, those that have been in the previous World Cups, and I have gathered some of these testimonials from our players that we will be publishing after the tournament to share with you as well, especially those who have played 3 and 4 and 5 World Cups, said they had never seen before such conditions. Our Players Commission Chair, Dirk Nowitzki, also visited the players' hotels, both here and in Okinawa, provided feedback to us where we had to make some adjustments during the tournament when it was some security topic or other matters. And we are very happy when our players are happy. I would be remiss not to mention, of course, our FIBA's condolences to the National Federation of Dominican Republic for the passing of its physiotherapist, Vladimir Garlado, and of course our best wishes for speedy recovery and a quick return back to the court for Boris Asimanic, who will receive, of course, his medal, and tonight we will know what color this medal will be. This is my introductory statement. Of course, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
We'll take some questions now. Please wait for the microphone. We start over here. Please state your name and the outlet you're working for.
Tim Reynolds with the Associated Press. Mr. Secretary, always good to see you. When you look at 2019, the 8 teams that made the quarterfinals, 3 of those teams didn't even qualify for this tournament. Only 2 of those quarterfinalists made it here. Tonight, 3 new medalists will be given out. I know in the NBA, Adam Silver always talks about parity and the need for it. Have we reached the parity age in international basketball, and how important is it to FIBA that there is some diversity of nation as far as the teams that are contending for the biggest prizes? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, parity is good. It's good because it means competitiveness, and it is excellent if it comes together with higher level of play all the time. What we have achieved, I think we have reached, is a greater depth in the roster of countries. 9 of the 32 that came to this World Cup did not play in the previous World Cup. So this shows that the decision to open up to 80 teams the qualification through the qualifiers has changed global basketball on the men's side. There's no doubt about that. I do believe that we have seen very high-level basketball. Having a semi-final being decided 220 plus points is not something that you see every day. I think the level that we saw in this tournament was high. The games were unpredictable, indeed. I'm not looking so much in the continental distribution as much as we look a lot at how a country goes through its own ceiling and passes to the next level from where it was in the past. So, for example, the 5 Africans, all of them won 1 game in the first phase, which is important indicator. Now, when you go to the final phase where the games are decided in 1 possession, I don't think this is absolute proof of the development of the sport in one country. But we do appreciate the fact that the road to Manila, this long process of qualification, has given the chance also to the federations, which we saw also in 19 with Poland and the Czech Republic, to build chemistry, to build rosters that are not just of one use, and then to plug in the pieces depending on the availability of the players and possible injuries. So these elements show to us that when you give the opportunity to the federations, to the head coaches of the national teams and to the players, they will play at a high level. Your reference to parity, even if we have not reached this level, what we really care about is that playing someone who is better than you is what makes you better. And that's what this World Cup is all about. And that's what is behind the expansion to 32 and the broader roster of 80.
Thank you. Can we get a microphone over here, second row?
Hi, Nikola Lalovic, Mondo, Serbia. I just want to ask you to say again those things about Borisa Simanic, and also because the development shocked everybody, to say to us how FIBA reacts to those situations, because like this is one in a million situation. Like it's very, very hard to predict some of that happening.
Thank you. Indeed, those who have seen the video can only say it is 1 in a million or perhaps 1 in a billion situation. The question is, what is the reaction after that? FIBA and the LOC had already, before the tournament, selected certain hospitals that will be immediately available to receive an urgent case. FIBA has appointed supervisory doctors, members of its medical commission, world top-class specialists, and each team, of course, is obliged and has a doctor. In the case of the Serbian team, the team doctor is also a member of the FIBA Medical Commission for many years, and he had an instrumental role in the management of the case. Immediately, both the FIBA team, the Serbian National Federation team, and the LOC activated all the resources that were available in order to take both in the first case, meaning the first 24 hours, the first night, and the first operation, the necessary measures, and then also over the weekend where further measures and further medical actions had to intervene. From my side, I said this to the family, and I have also taken a personal commitment to them not to make too many comments to the press about the case. So they have the support of FIBA. Of course, the player and his salary are insured. We are in very good contact with the federation. I want to thank the LOC, and I want to publicly acknowledge the role and contribution of Dr. Radovanovic, who has been crucial in this matter.
Thank you. We continue over here.
Hello, Christos Chaldas, Sportal Greece. Mr. Zagklis, in the quarter-final game between Slovenia and Canada, Luka Doncic made a move to the FIBA officials about money paid and stuff like that. How you react through this action by Luka Doncic, and what you need to do to cut down those actions like this?
I don't think this is something I should really be commenting. There are actions by the players on the court. That's why the referees are there. They are taking care of what is happening on the court, and the game moves on and the life moves on. And that's it.
Thank you. One more question up here, please.
Karol Śliwa from Poland. I have a question about the rules. Is FIBA planning on making any tweaks, changes on the rules or interpretations? And if you do, could you please go into the details? And second question, specifically on possibility of taking a timeout during the live ball, which is allowed in NBA, still not allowed in FIBA. On a great example, there was 6 or 7 seconds on the clock in the game Latvia against Germany. Latvians got the ball, and yeah, if they had a chance to take a timeout, they probably would have, and had time to prepare the set play.
And perhaps the set play would be for a three-point shot of this same man that took the three-point shot, right?
Never know.
Yes, of course, you never know. That is true. We have our technical commission, just to tell you a little bit the decision-making process. We have a rules advisory group, which includes NBA and NCAA representatives, as well as coach and player representation. Then we have our technical commission, and the central board decides on the rules. there's a continuous review of the rules. Of course, we cannot be changing every year because we need to be responsible towards also the market. And we will have an analysis of what happened this year. You probably saw one change in the interpretation, in the sense that the criteria on the unsportsmanlike foul and the way it has been officiated this year compared to the Continentals last year, I believe it was much better, because you spoke about interpretation, and our referee operations team has put a lot of emphasis on that, and I think they have done a great job. Now, when it comes to the rules, I think the perception is that there are too many differences with the rules in perhaps the NBA. I don't think there are too many fundamental rules that are changed, that are different. The size of the court perhaps is one of them, and the lines or the interference. But what I would say is that right now we don't have a specific idea on going immediately to a change. I think we need to see in detail the analysis of this tournament, which always gives us, because it has a very high number of games, 92 games, and to go after that into an analysis. I don't expect any changes in the rules before the Olympics. That is certainly the case. And looking now on the road to Qatar 2027, I think after the Olympics, between the Olympics and the Eurobasket 25 for Europe, the America or Asia Cup, and the Afrobasket, we may have some tweaks in the rules. But I cannot tell you exactly in which direction. I don't think the timeout would be one of them. I have not seen it in the analysis of our experts so far. And then we will see. I would like sometimes that our rules not only catch up with the athleticism and the tactics of our game, but sometimes the rules guide where the game is going. And I think this is part of our job as well.
Thank you. Microphone in the first row.
Thanks. Emmett Ryan from Ball in Europe. Going back to whenever I had brown hair, coaches have been complaining about the naturalized player rule. Have FIBA considered, or would you consider, switching maybe to the model FIFA have, where a parent or grandparent would be a factor in maybe a longer form of naturalization of several years? Would that be something you'd consider when it comes to sort of broadening the player pool for national teams?
No, we will not go in that direction due to the specificities that we have in our sport. We have 2-3 big markets that produce players that are connected to a number of other countries, and that would lead to national teams that have very little to nothing to do with the level of basketball and the development of basketball in a country. We have United States, as you know, that has a use-only approach. You are born there, you have a passport, but of course you may at the same time have another passport due to a father, grandfather, etc. So as a rule, the central board is clear: one naturalized player. Number one, this is a principle that I don't see changing. And number two, the criteria for how someone gets the eligibility is clear. You have the passport, you're eligible. Now, if you had the passport after the age of 16, we have to see if you had significant links with the country. And if you didn't, then you fall under the naturalized category. It's a very difficult rule. I spend this year in our continental assemblies quite a lot of time re-explaining it to our members. We'll understand it, but when we have our own case, everybody forgets the rule and says, I would like a different rule. And then when we say, propose to us a rule that would bring a fairer result from a competitiveness point of view, nobody has proposed something better than that, I have to be honest with you. So we're sticking to this rule, and we have a very experienced team that is reviewing the eligibility and the application of this rule. And we have to be very responsible on how we deal with that.
Thank you. Question in the third row, yes.
Donatas Urbanas, basketnews.com. Eric Gordon recently switched from Team USA to Bahamas, and despite playing for the Team USA in the FIBA competitions, and there's Klay Thompson, who also said that he considers joining Bahamas. What do you think about this particular case of him potentially joining Bahamas as the second former Team USA player? And how it goes with FIBA, are you concerned that it might kind of open a Pandora box for some other teams potentially to strengthen their rosters? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. As a policy, I try to avoid making comments on individual eligibility cases. I understand the question. The rule is if you played after the age of 17, you cannot change unless there are specific circumstances that justify the change, that you go back to your country of origin. And there we look at a number of criteria. One of them is how long ago you played for the other country. So I think I'm indirectly trying to answer your question, but I don't want to tell you exactly how we dealt with that file, or how we will deal in the future with the other file. To the second part of your sentence, yes, we're concerned in the sense that we cannot use this exception, which lies with the discretion of the Secretary General, in order to open a Pandora's box. So I have been exercising it in a very careful way, and I will continue doing so.
I saw one more question over here. Yes? Yes.
Spiros Cavalleratos, Sport24 Greece. Are you going to split the pre-Olympic tournament all around the world, or maybe some continents might organize more than one during the summer, next summer?
This depends on the candidatures. This depends on the decision of the Central Board. And this is essentially the answer. The rules do not require us to split. In terms of policy, it would be good to spread around if we have candidatures from several continents, but we need to see what type of candidatures we get, what type of conditions. You see how important it is for us to have high-level conditions for our players. This is very close to the Olympics. You know, we are the last sport qualifying for the Olympics with a special approval by the IOC, and I want to thank them for that, because in our conversations with our players, as well as with our union of leagues in Europe, they needed a few days more to finish their championships. We wanted to avoid what happened in 2012, players flying directly from the Italian league finals to Venezuela, you remember? So we give some oxygen there in terms of time. Then we will see what candidatures we get, what are the conditions, especially for the players in each candidature, and then the FIBA competent body decides. As I said, in terms of policy, it would be good if we go to more than one continent, but it's not a must, and it's not something that I say in advance it will be this way or it will be the other way. We'll have to see. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw one more question over here.
Good afternoon, Mr. General Secretary. Antonis Kalgavouras from Gazeta.gr.Greece. It seems that there is significant progress in your long-time talks, discussions, meetings with EuroLeague concerning, their schedule on the same dates that are scheduled FIBA Windows games. Do you think that we are approaching to a final agreement, in order to get rid of this basketball confusion, with playing games at the same time with clubs and national teams?
I think FIBA has been very clear and very consistent for the last 5 years at least that it wants to eliminate this type of overlaps on the calendar, both on the men's and in the women's side, wherever these exist. And it is ready to sit down and really discuss in a constructive manner. We were the ones that took 2 years ago, just before flying to Tokyo, the first step to reinitiate the discussion with our league in Europe. And we were the ones who brought the NBA into this discussion. And we were the ones who started making steps in the direction of our clubs and our leagues with several measures. Please don't forget, this World Cup is being played 1 week earlier than the previous World Cup because our clubs asked for it. And this was not used by FIBA in any type of negotiation. We don't take our role lightly as the governing body of the sport by keeping the cards on us to trade them later for something. We have been very clear that we want to increase the credibility of our organization among the clubs, and we also want to increase the reliability on how good we can organize also club competitions. These two elements have given us a different standing in this conversation. The clubs understand that we want them to have a good business, a sustainable business, as long as they respect the other stakeholders in the environment. The conversations over the last 18 months have not been consistent because there have been 3 different CEOs, but we have had indeed at the beginning of the summer, continuing on my good discussions with Mr. Glickman and following up on them with Mr. Moteyunas, we have had indeed constructive discussions, and you saw a small but first really substantive step in the good direction. There is still a long way to cover. I'm always optimistic because I know the mindset in which we, as one FIBA, go to the table. And I'm also optimistic because I know we're not there to hurt our clubs. We're just there to try to find a good balance. So I'm optimistic, but of course it takes two to come to a conclusion. We will work hard, and that is exactly what we agreed upon, that this season we avoid the overlap. We had taken an exceptional measure for this season only to merge November with February. So February will have no overlap. I think we will have great games in February, which will benefit both the national federations as well as the clubs. And that's the only way to make the pie bigger. And if the pie gets bigger, the first ones who will benefit from it are the ones who are playing most of the time basketball and have fans in the venues, and that is our clubs. So it is this mindset that we are approaching this conversation. So a lot of hard work to do, but I think it's doable.
Thank you. Question, the woman in the beige jacket first, yes?
Yeah, Beatrice Goff from Al Jazeera. So this is the second straight World Cup hosted in Asia, and you'll be hosting 2027 in Qatar. What impact has the World Cup had on Asia, and what else are you working towards too?
Well, the impact is multifold. I think I should focus first on the fans. I think the fans have been exposed to the international game in a way that is impossible to expose them just through the media, through TV and their mobile phones. With the big exposure that our top men's league has, the NBA, we have had the opportunity to exhibit to the fans in China, then the fans in Japan and in Jakarta, and hear what the international game, the FIBA basketball, is all about. And that has put also a different context to our fans and to also the basketball stakeholders that have come to me and now say, okay, now we understand better what we need to do to improve. And that is fundamental. Have we seen this improvement with the 2 World Cups in East and Southeast Asia? Not as much as we had expected. There is, of course, the excuse, a valid excuse, which is called COVID, and that will have an impact on especially East Asia countries in the next 2-3 years in terms of development. I think we lost one generation, meaning 1 year or 2 of players compared to other parts of the world that were not closed for such a long period. And this is the unfortunate side, but the fortunate side is we have mobilized so many more people to play basketball in this part of the world that is so populous. So I'm very optimistic about what Asia can do in the future. And I see good also initiatives in terms of club basketball. And that was, in my personal opinion, the secret behind the rise of Europe. Playing more internationally at the club and then the national team level, playing against the better makes you improve. Of course, here the distances are much bigger. It's not that easy. But, you know, there are some great airline companies and some great airports, and connections are not that difficult at the end of the day. So I'm optimistic, and I see how the PBA here is talking to us, and we're exchanging, and they have learned a lot from this event, and we have learned a lot from them. I really think we will see an upgraded PBA product in the next years in Philippines. The B League is becoming one of the top 10 for sure, maybe top 5 very soon leagues, domestic leagues in the world, both in terms of budgets and spectacle and imports. So I think CBA will also come back soon in terms of where it was and where it wants to be. I had a good discussion also with our board member Yao Ming in that respect. Despite the national team results, I think the potential is there. Now, Doha is Asia still, but it's the West is different. It's the first one in MENA region, first one in the Arab world. I believe there the initiatives are coming one after the other. We started the West Asia Super League. This year we played our Final 8 in Dubai. There we have some countries where basketball is number one. Lebanon, you get off the airport and the first billboard you see is the captain of the national team of basketball. We have, I think, a big interest for team sports in the Gulf region that is growing, and North Africa has, also part of the MENA, has had for a long time a tradition in basketball, and Egypt did quite well here. So I'm optimistic that going into this new market for us will also expand our footprint, but also, most importantly, that is our job, develop basketball in that part of the world even more.
I see you. One question all the way in the back, please.
David Hine with FIBA. There's been some reports circulating about the prize money for the World Cup. I just was wondering if you can maybe clarify where the money comes from and where it's distributed to.
There is no prize money for the World Cup, just to be clear. FIBA is supporting the federations in covering a lot of their costs. You probably saw in our recent Congress that directly or indirectly we have contributed more than 80 million to the federations and into their costs over the 4 years. We have one of the biggest insurance programs in sports, and it is equal. It's exactly the same insurance program for men and women players. We also cover now 3x3 and wheelchair basketball players, and that costs us in the cycle. To put also some figures in the context, we expect in the next 4 years we budgeted more than 15 million for just the FIBA players insurance. The contributions to the teams that come to the World Cup are contributions to their expenses. There is no prize money, and I think, I don't know if it is public or not, but I have no problem to share the numbers with you. We contributed 50,000 Swiss francs to every federation for their preparation costs. And that came on the back of the Spain World Cup, when we started on the road to China to understand that our clubs, not only the NBA clubs, but also the FIBA clubs, have been upgrading constantly the service to the players. So our federations in the preparation, they had really high costs. So we contributed. Back then we paid actually 100,000 before China to each federation. This time we said we allocate half of this amount to cover one cost, which was the single rooms, and we paid 50,000. And then for those who stayed longer in the tournament, the top 16, we allocated another 100,000, because what the federations pay extra during the tournament is very high amounts for expenses. They have extra staff. I still remember that the first picture I got from our staff here in the Philippines was Montenegro truck arrived, because Montenegro had a truck of luggage. To give you a little bit of sense how much work, how much logistics goes around the servicing of our players. So it's an entire operation, the national team, and that's what we are contributing in terms of expenses. So the central board has decided there is no prize money in national team competitions of FIBA, and what we generate in terms of resources as a non-for-profit organization is then distributed according to our development programs and other distribution mechanisms across the countries, all 212 members of FIBA.
Question over here, gentleman in the red shirt, yes.
Hello. Yann Casville, French magazine Basket Le Mag. You talked about attendances in your opening statements, and I was a bit surprised that here in Manila, in a country so in love with basketball, the arena was not sold out for every game. And I talked with a lot of people here, and they all told me the same thing, that tickets were way too expensive for them. So don't you think there's something wrong about that? Thank you.
Thank you. The pricing of the tickets, which was determined by the locals but reviewed by FIBA, so we have our share in this, of course, and we were part of this process. For some categories, was not successful. I can say that. This is one of the major debriefing points we'll have. I was several times in a venue where the fourth and fifth tier were full. The first tier was full, and the second and third were not. So that's where you see immediately the impact of pricing. And this happened several times. So we can say perhaps the second and the third tier were higher priced than would have been the market acceptable price. That said, when the local team is playing, it's difficult to fill up the other venue that is playing at the same time, because those who are not in the venue will watch their national team on TV or on their phone. And we did have here, if I'm not mistaken, 50 plus games to fill in the venues. Indeed, we would have liked to have a little bit higher attendances here in Manila. Overall, we are happy with how it worked, considering also that in some cases we may have had a big storm just before the game that really caused a traffic jam, and we had the venue half empty at the beginning and only 75% full at halftime. Or some people having bought a ticket then did not arrive or decided not to come. These are indeed, you're right, in some pricing categories, if we were not right in our judgment before the tournament, and this is something for sure to review for Doha, because there all 92 games are in the same city. Of course, there people will be able to buy their tickets from the moment that their team is qualified. You know where they will play. Here we had the additional element that you had to wait until the draw to see where your team is playing, and that changed the plans of several of our traveling fans.
Question up here in the middle, please.
Takashi Aoki, Yahoo Japan News, right here.
Hello.
It was announced that ticket for Japan against Germany was sold out, but there were a lot of empty seats due to no show, and those tickets were not sold in general public. How did you feel when you learned about this, and what do you think FIBA needs to prevent this problem from happening again?
I'm not aware about what happened for this exact game. I have to be fully transparent with you. We like it very much when we sell out the tickets, but then sometimes people don't show up. I don't know if these were complimentary tickets, so partner tickets, or sponsor tickets, or tickets that were part of a package, perhaps of a travel agency or otherwise. So I don't have a specific answer for that particular game. I do know that sometimes when we have an urgent weather condition or otherwise, some people may decide not to come last minute. And the problem for us is it's extremely difficult and risky, especially for a semi-final, to at one point in the game say to someone, you can take that seat, because the person who paid a high amount for that seat, and as we heard just now, maybe a very high amount, may show up late. So we have been quite delicately dealing with this, moving people around in the venues, because the owner or the one who paid for a seat should be able to find their seat. I didn't come to my attention that there were so many empty seats. To be honest with you, I was at the game, but if you say so, of course, that is the case. I don't know if there is it was a symptom or it was something more systemic behind it, but we will look at this, of course. Thank you.
I see one more question over here in the back.
Dennis Lejubo, MTN TV Plus South Sudan. Once again, congratulations on a very successful FIBA World Cup. Just a question. So we saw 5 African countries represented in this World Cup for a continent with 54 countries. Do we see an increase in the number in the future?
I don't think this is in the plan for 27. I do see the increase, first of all, on the quality of preparation. The 5 teams that came here were better prepared than the 5 teams that came in 2019. That's a fact, and that's something I acknowledge, and I congratulated the 5 presidents of the federation, spoke to Luol as well, and for the fantastic, the fairy tale of South Sudan making it to the Olympics. The I would connect also the success of the BAL, the Basketball Africa League, our partnership with the NBA, in improving the level of our African players. I don't think it's an accident that in the third season of the BAL, the MVP was not, as in the first two seasons, an import player, a US player, or Virgin Islands, that was the first season. That Omot was the MVP, a South Sudanese player in the Rwanda finals that I also attended in last May. So I do see the link there, and I believe that the more the BAL grows and the more clubs around Africa really become more systematic in developing players, together with the work that we do through our office in Abidjan, I think the potential of Africa is obvious. I don't need to say it. It has been stated several times. Now, whether we will reallocate the quotas, that's a good question. If we stay with 32, which is currently the plan, if you take a quota in favor of Africa, you have to take it away from someone else. So we don't have indications in that respect for the moment. So for 27, we'll, as all indications are, for the moment continue with the same continental allocation. But I can tell you the rankings are continuously monitored, and Africa is all the time more relevant in these rankings.
Final question for the Secretary General. Yes, up here. Can we get a microphone?
Hi, sir. Dennis Hilanga from Radyo Pilipinas. When the Angola team lost to Dominican Republic in the preliminary stage, Coach Pep Claros has called on to FIBA to disallow the naturalization of players, as he said that it slows down the development of local players. What is FIBA's take on this? And the second question is, for you, what is your overall assessment of the Manila hosting of the World Cup?
I start with the last. Manila has been an excellent host. I don't think it's easy to find anywhere else in the world this level of service to the visitors. Always with a smile, always with kindness, always with a solution-oriented approach. I can only express how grateful FIBA is to the Philippines and to the city of Manila. From the top of the government, the head of state received us a few months ago, and he came to our opening game, as you know, to the volunteers that take care of you, of us here in the venues and in our hotel. So we're grateful to them. On the naturalization, as I did earlier, and also on the topic of changing of from one country to another, the one naturalized player rule is there to stay. It is one. And perhaps I didn't mention it when I was answering the earlier question about Bahamas. Sometimes when a player like that changes, falls into the naturalized player slot. So even if several change, it doesn't mean that all of them can play. So this rule is there, and it will not become 2, and it will not become 0. The Central Board consensus is clear on that, and I think that the rule of FIBA is one of the strictest out there. So I have much more criticism of how strict the rule is than how relaxed the rule is. So I take the comment, of course, and I know what Angola feels, or what, for example, other countries, I don't want to mention now names, in the continent feel, that do a lot of work on development. They invest, they play the under-16s, they play the under-18s, they develop players, and then another country comes and they just bring diaspora players that were trained with 0 cost for the federation by another country, and they bring them into the national team. I know several of our federations feel like that. The other federations say, no, these are our blood, these are our relatives, these are our sons and daughters. So that is a difficult balance for us to make there.
Thank you. This is it for today.
We have a couple of more.
Much.
There are not too many. Let's take a couple of more. There are 2 more.
Okay.
There were not too many hands. Let's take.
Let's move over here. Yes. Can we get one microphone? Either one.
Hello, Mr. Secretary General. Arj Barkas from Eurohoops. I would like to ask you, because that was also mentioned by Coach Steve Kerr, do you think that in the future, I'm not talking about the next World Cup, maybe there should be a restructure of how the Continental Championship and the FIBA World Cup are allocated throughout the summers? Because there is an indication that a lot of NBA stars are not going to play back-to-back in the World Cup and the Olympics.
That's a difficult one. That's a difficult one because we took the big decision to have one summer free, essentially from a major tournament. And that is 18, 22, 26. It's a summer of the Women's World Cup. Then we say the calendar has essentially three pillars. You know, the two major world events, with the Olympics being our showcase, only for 12 teams, but still the event that has more eyeballs than any other sports event on the world on it. The World Cup, which is the heart of our ecosystem, the flagship event, what really brings most of the resources to FIBA and its national federations, and what allows us also to measure development. It's 32 teams deep. It is the most difficult tournament to win, and you saw that the link to the Olympics made this tournament so interesting. I really congratulated my team for the competition format, because it was not only who wins the Naismith Trophy, it was not only who goes for the medals, it was not only who goes for the direct Olympic spot, then it became who goes to the direct OQT spot. And at the end of the day, last game Philippines-China, it was about the OQT spot, because being 22nd or 29th makes a big difference. Same for New Zealand versus Egypt, that we're playing a 17-32 last classification game, and they were giving it all. So I don't think any other World Championship or World Cup in any sport has, at this late stage of the classification games, so much interest and so much meaningful game. So, and if we didn't have two Europeans, or if France was one of the two Europeans in the semis, yesterday's game would be do or die for the Olympics for a European team. So this link between our two top world level events is something that is very difficult to sacrifice. The back-to-back is a reality, indeed, but at the same time, we should also look at it on a 4-year cycle. And for some of our players that prioritize the World Cup and the Olympics, yes, it is a commitment, but it is, compared to the past, only 2 major tournaments in 4. But of course, EuroBasket is very important for us. The America Cup, the Asia Cup, the Afrobasket has a tremendous tradition in Africa. So, as I said recently, wherever we have the players available, we will give them the best possible service. We were very happy there were last year so many available in the EuroBasket. Some of them were not available. They are this year in the World Cup. And I think what we have to do is really provide the utmost conditions that we can afford with our hosts, for the players to represent their country and say, you know what, I want to be back. You know, I like this. This is the experience of my life. So I hope that's what we gave to them in this tournament. And let's face it, no matter what club you play for, the only case you'll make it to the front of the newspapers in your country is if your national team goes for a medal or for a big success. So the value is there for everyone.
We continue in the back.
Maxime Paquette, La Presse, Montreal. Could you tell us about the economic repercussions on the host countries and how many jobs it creates locally?
Not yet. We will have the impact study ready before the end of the year. We have collaboration in the previous World Cup was with a Big Four auditing company. Now we have a different provider that is doing this impact study, which we do for the World Cup and for our continentals. So we will have the impact of the event, and we can share the figures after that. So whatever I tell you now, I think will be based on more assumptions than a proper answer that would be appropriate for your readers. So the feedback we have received from the locals was that it really created such attraction in the local economies that was not expected, because in 2019 we didn't have the chance to have so many international or traveling fans. This time we had many. We thought we would have more, but having to push for the reasons you know of the calendar, the draw by 4 weeks back, it cut some of the traveling fans' plans. but the impact of the Latvians in Jakarta is obvious. The impact of the Finns in Okinawa is obvious. We had here some traveling fans. We have seen the impact based on our day-to-day, I would say, exchanges with the locals. But I don't have figures for you now, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. One more question back here.
Here in the back, José Ramón Alba, TV from Spain. As we mentioned it, the bonus for the teams that stay longer in the tournament depends on how long they stay. But there was also, when my colleagues mentioned it on their media, in their media outlets, and they published it, some female players that 2.5 months were playing the finals of the Eurobasket and eventually will try to qualify for Germany 2026 said, "Oh, it's only for male players, what about us?" Which message do you have for this reaction for these top players?
This is not a bonus. As I said, there is no prize money. This is covering the cost. This tournament is twice the duration of the Women's World Cup. And we will, of course, some of the players' experience aspects that we are doing here, we will certainly do in 26. There is not an accident that we announced the ambassador of 26 2 days ago, or yesterday, in Manila. Subert will be the ambassador. She was here. She was asking what level of conditions the male players have and what are our expectations for 26. It's not an accident that yesterday the Central Board of FIBA, for the first time, co-opted the deputy chairwoman of the Players Commission into the Central Board with Sonja Vasic. So we will have a player that was an active player until a few months ago, that has played the World Cup, that has had an Olympic medal and 2 times Eurobasket. So my answer is, this is subvention to the cost of the federation. It is not different prize money, or there's no prize money. And I believe the players that played last year in Sydney saw the difference in the playing conditions with Tenerife 2018, and I think they will see also the difference in 2026. And I also believe those who played in Slovenia and Israel this year, they saw. We had players experience for a Women's World Cup for the first time last year in Sydney, based on what we did for the men in China. And in all other aspects, I had a meeting in Sydney last year with several players. Some of them said, why did we have to do an integrity workshop here? Are the men doing it? Yes, the men did it as well. So we're quite sensitive on that. Women in basketball is a priority for us. So this is not money that is being given as a bonus or otherwise to the federations. And if our federations in the preparation for 26 World Cup have additional costs, we will also look at covering them. But sometimes we give cash, sometimes we cover it directly. We don't do this to be publicized. Of course, I know the figures take much of your attention, but we could have easily said we cover your laundry during the year, or your logistics, or your extra luggage for the event. But instead, we said for some things we just cut a check. There was one there, last one, I think.
Final question.
Yes, there. Yes, please go ahead. No,
Can we get a microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Nikos Papadopoulos from Gazeta GR, Greece. What was the logic behind bringing the World Cup in Asia for the 3rd straight time? I mean, was there no interest from other continents? What about rotation and representation? And speaking of location, is there going to be a quota per continent in next year's OQT tournaments?
I didn't understand the last part. Is there going to be a quota on?
Per continent in next year's Olympic qualifying tournaments, on where they will be played, which continent?
Okay, that was, I think, the same question that I got earlier, no? But no problem.
I probably wasn't
No problem, no problem. I will respond to that as well. So, if you mean quota, whether the 4 tournaments have to be spread in 4 continents, the answer is no, they don't have to. First, we depend on who applies. I would like to be clear on one thing. At least in the last 5 years, there are no wildcards. So you cannot apply for a spot in the OQT by requesting to host. The 24 teams are fixed. Now, from a business perspective, you will tell me that's not very smart. because now I have only 24 potential hosts. But the Central Board has been very clear. We prioritize the competition aspect here than the business aspect. Yuli will not be very happy with what I did. So we prioritize the competition aspect than the aspect of wildcard or coming through the window. That means we have 24 countries that can bid. We need to see then, from these 24, who applies. As of the moment that we have the applications, I think from a policy perspective, it would make sense that we're not going with all four in one continent. But this doesn't mean that the board or the executive committee that decides says, well, based on the conditions we have received from the bidders in respect of the players, experience on the venues, distance from the airport, all these elements that we look, maybe we go for that option or for the other option. This belongs to the executive committee to decide. That is how we look at it from a policy perspective. So no wildcards, 24 potential bidders. We will see how many we have, and then we will decide where the 4 OQTs will go. And it's not a rule that they have to be in different continents. But I do believe that from a policy perspective, perhaps they should. But we will see how this goes, this plays out. Now, with all that, I forgot your first question was on the... Why 3 straight in Asia? Well, I think I find more meaning why 2 straight in East Asia and Southeast, to be honest with you, because the third one, Qatar 27, is still in the same continent, but with the way we have been split 70 years ago and organized. But of course, if you look at it in today's market reality, and I'm not talking geopolitics now, I'm talking pure basketball reality as well as social reality, it is a different region. It is a different region we're coming to. We're coming for the first time into the Arab world, into western part of Asia, into the Gulf region that loves team sports. We have in the West our new league, the West Asia Super League. As I said earlier, we played in Dubai, fantastic Final 8. We see some countries are traditional in our sport. You know, Lebanon and Jordan, our sport is very strong. It is increasingly popular now in the Gulf, with Qatar, with Saudi, Bahrain now qualified through the pre-OQT into play the OQT for the first time. So Qatar is very committed, and I think personally it will be the dream of a fan, because you know where to go. Those who don't care if their team qualifies tomorrow morning, they can book their tickets, they can book their hotels. It is yes, it's going to be hot, it's off-season, but it is going to be a tremendous basketball experience for those who love basketball. And you will be able to see all the best players in the world in the same city, across 4 venues that are already existing, and what we will try to make really as sustainable as possible championship. So that is the concept behind allocating this. There was interest from other continents, there was interest also from Europe. Of course, the candidatures, some of the candidates had to deal with the COVID aspect, and as well the inflation that we had over the last month. Some governments were not providing the guarantees. So some federations from other continents came almost all the way, and then at the end said, well, we may need some more time. We had a flexible process. That was the last stop. Qatar was there, and they had a very good presentation.
Thank you. This wraps up today's press conference. Thank you very much.